startup to hardware solutions. So you subscribe for a reason, and hopefully this is what you want to learn today, because in the upcoming hour, we will tell a little bit more about what Lean Startup is and how you should apply it to hardware solutions. And that's why we also invite a guest. So who am I? I'm Maarten van Kronenburg, the owner and founder of BW Ventures. With BW Ventures, we help corporates initiate new innovation projects and especially make sure that they create commercially successful innovations. And commercially successful means building a product that people like and that people want to pay for, or in an internal setting, it's going to drive down some costs or have a big internal client that is going to bring some kind of value back to the innovation project. More on that later on. I started BW Ventures about 7 years ago. We've helped more than, I think, in the meantime, more than 50 innovation projects, maybe even 200. I've lost track, to be quite honest. But ranging from companies like Dela to Chamber of Commerce, National Police, but also with TMC, we did some great, some great projects. Before that, I was an entrepreneur in the music industry. So I'm an entrepreneur since the age of 19, which means right now I'm an entrepreneur for 12 years, 13 years. I also want to lose count here. Also there I've learned a lot about how to experiment and how to adjust to a very, very rapidly changing environment. I want to give you the word back, because it's also good that you introduce yourself.
Well, again, I'm not saying entrepreneur from start, but I may call myself a very entrepreneurial spirit in that sense. Having a background in industrial engineering and innovation, I immediately was very interested in making a business happen out of ideas, experiments, and out of making collaborations happen. So already from a younger age onwards, that's what I've done. That's what I really like to do within the entrepreneurial lab of TMC, trying to really build solutions that contribute to the world and or contribute to solving important challenges or problems. And we will hear a lot more about that when I will have a conversation later on with Danny Hameteman, one of the entrepreneurs of TMC, and also the initiator and founder of the startup Cita Robotics, which started as a project within TMC. I think together with Danny, you will get a way better view on what happens all inside this entrepreneurial lab here at TMC.
Cool. So before we kick off, I want to dive into what is Lean Startup? And I'd like to first ask you this question because there's a lot about Lean Startup, and there's a lot of definitions about Lean Startup. But what is, in your opinion, what Lean Startup is all about? And you can give some comments in the chat area, but we're very curious to see what's Lean Startup in your opinion. And well, let's give a minute or two to answer that question.
See people making use of the chat function, so we'll give you some time to indeed write down your answer, of course.
Yeah, people are still typing.
Yep, there we are. First answer.
Let's see. A method that helps you to validate quickly, test whether your idea will succeed in the market. It's pretty good so far. see if someone else is still typing. No, I don't see a lot typing.
Rapid feedback from users. Get rapid feedback from users. 2, continuous improvement. And 3, plan often, but not too long.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to answer these individual comments immediately, but hopefully, you get a better understanding of what we see as Lean Startup, because we also know that in the past 7 years, we've created our own sort of interpretation of what Lean Startup and customer development is. But first of all, if you want to apply Lean Startup, you should apply Lean Startup to a startup. But what do we define as a startup? And that's, for me, it's a critical question. A startup is a human institution designed to deliver a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. This is from Eric Ries from the Blue Book, The Lean Startup. And the critical thing here is that you're building something under extreme uncertainty. And what do I mean with that? If you're going to build a new hardware product and the product itself has already been proven in other markets or with other users or clients, there's no extreme uncertainty. So let me give just an example of this. If you're going to build a completely new car, the model of a car has already been proven. So we know for a fact that people want to drive a car. We know that they're willing to pay for a car. What we potentially do not know is how's the battery going to work. So what is a electrical car going to do? There's a lot of technical challenges there, but the real value that it's delivering, getting you from A to B in a luxurious way or a very cheap way, that question is out of the question. That's not an extreme uncertainty. Now, let's give another example. If we're going to create a hair salon that's being run by robots, it's a completely different question. Because we do not know if people want to be cut by robots, or at least their hairs. We do not know how the robots are going to work. We do not know if people want to pay for such a, treatment. There's a lot of uncertainty there. The point here is, if you know that something has been proven in another market, or that a product has been proven and you want to upgrade, getting from version 1.0 to 2.0, it's not that you're going to apply Lean Startup in its most pure form, because it can be just a combination of things that have been proven, and that's what you're going to introduce. It's not something completely uncertain. Why is that so important? Because with Lean Startup, you're going to prove a lot of stuff that you want to deliver to a market. And Lean Startup has not just been, introduced in 2009. There's a lot of things going on before Lean Startup has been introduced. And I always want to do a quick sort of timeline of where Lean Startup started. So some people mentioned that it's already out there since 1450. I think that's a little bit too early, to be quite honest, because what they mentioned is in Venetia, they are building these gondolas. Is that the correct English term? Yeah, gondolas. And in Venetia, there were the first guilds that actually created, parts of the gondol and then assembled it into one guild. I think it's a little bit too early, but if you continue and you go into the Henry Ford, production process, that is where I think the roots can be found of Lean Startup. Because in that time, more and more research was being done to create scalable production processes and create sort of mass market models. And especially during the Second World War, when America decided to join the war, there was nothing. They didn't have a big, war machine. And especially Sloan and Deming, they looked at what Ford did, picked out the right processes and optimized it to create like masses of products. And that literally helped to well, win the war. But then after the war, Japan had a completely, well, opposite problem because they couldn't spend all the resources because there were no resources and Japan needed to be rebuilt very quickly. And a lot of people started thinking about how can we create or produce like products and services, but with very lean processes because there's no endless budget to spend. And the most, well, known process right now is the just-in-time system from Toyota. And that's where people start talking about lean manufacturing. So how can we build a production system that can deliver in time based on what a customer actually wants? Then if you skip forward in the 1970s, 1980s, we started to work with KPIs, key performance indicators. And if we look at lean startup, there's this first sort of pillar that mentions, hey, we want to create something lean. We want to create a process that is lean and mean to service our customers in the best way possible. But we also need to measure what we are actually doing. And not based on financial KPIs, but on innovation KPIs, innovation accounting. So that's pillar number 2 of what lean startup has become. Then if you go forward in time, the 90s, we started to see, especially from the IT world, that we couldn't just build one product in a waterfall system and just deliver it because there was no sort of feedback in between. And that's where, well, Schweber started to introduce Scrum. And within Scrum, the idea is to work agile, to work in sprints, and to adjust based on user feedback. That's pillar number 3. You're going to work agile. So you're going to work agile in a very lean and mean process with strict innovation metrics. And these are, for me, the main pillars of what lean startup actually is. Now, the last step that actually made it lean startup and customer development is Eric Ries and Steve Blank were building quite a lot of startups. They failed often, and they figured out that most of the startup methods that are being learned, or especially back then, they were looking at startups and new corporate ventures as smaller versions of what bigger companies were doing. So a SWOT analysis, a strategic plan, communication plans, marketing plans, they were all created like they were smaller versions of what bigger companies were doing. And they mentioned that's not working because you can't optimize something. You can't just enter a new market by pushing that market. And that's why they introduced like experimentation, building your hypothesis, validating your hypothesis, and see what's working and what's not working. And that's why they introduced the the build, measure, learn. So the build, measure, learn cycle. In the projects that we've helped, we figured out that the build, measure, learn cycle is actually great, but in our opinion, there's one little mistake in this cycle. And I'm very curious to know what you think is the default or the sort of failure within this circle. What should be changed in this circle? And feel free to comment.
Do you think there is a failure in this build, measure, learn loop? And if yes, what do you believe is the failure in this build, measure, learn loop? And or what should be adjusted or what should be changed? We're very curious. If you have any thoughts about that, to hear that from you.
It's that everyone is muted, but otherwise I think I hear some cracking brains right now. I'm gonna give you a minute and then I'm gonna answer it.
I think we're getting answers.
Seems like it. Yeah. Okay. Seems like Lotte is finishing her answer. Let's wait for that and then we'll continue.
I think we have.
Ah.
Lotte is guessing.
Yeah.
She's suggesting that the product in the early stages is just a low fidelity prototype. However, that is also part of the design thinking process.
It's interesting. It is product in the circle that we want to change, but here's this is the biggest problem of applying lean startup to hardware solutions. Time and time again, we experience that people still want to build a product, then start measuring what it does, learning from that, and adjusting their full proposition. But the key in applying lean startup to hardware solutions is you still need to break down all the hypotheses that you have, but it's not just about product development. It's the combination of learning what the promise towards your customers is, learning from all these experiments, adjusting your product and proposition, and getting back into this feedback loop. And well, the biggest issue that we see here is that this circle still implies that you should build a product before you can learn anything. And that's just not true. We're able to get commitments, to get signed letters of intent, to get signed contracts before you actually build something. And that means you do not have to invest a lot to already get some traction. Now, how do we do that? I'm not going to explain this full cycle, but the idea is that you first sketch out what is your proposition, what's the full set of assumptions that you have about your innovation project, and that all starts with filling out a lean canvas. Just in 20 minutes, that's it. And what you want to do is you want to build experiments that break down every part of the lean canvas. So that starts, for example, with problem discovery interviews. Then you're gonna learn about how people are actually solving these problems with existing alternatives. So what are they used to use right now? Are they using Excel sheets? Are they using maybe just other hardware solutions? But these other hardware solutions are not solving the problems that they actually want to solve. So you can learn how your solution should, 10x what they're used to. That's the whole purpose of solution discovery. Then if you understand that and you start to see what kind of promise you need to make to a customer, you also understand how you can pitch and get commitments from them, and then start building the first versions of your product with your customer, instead of you just pushing out the first version of your product and then seeing if it sticks, yes or no. More on that in the interview with Danny as well. But what you want to do within, especially with hardware solutions, you want to fulfill this circle before you start scaling up your production facilities. Start scaling up, the production of the product itself. first thing you want to do is understand which niche are you focusing on? What is the customer group that you are focusing on? The second step is you want to understand what their top problem is and what their 3 to 5 sub-problems are. The top problem is typically the underlying problem. That's what they really want to solve. The sub-problems are the problems that they start talking about immediately. It's the, for example, it's the how do you call that? It's the first sort of thing that they feel. It's the first thing that they see. So let's have a quick look at an Excel sheet. I'm using an Excel sheet to create a planning or a timeline for something, but I'm having some issues with, clicking the right cells and inputting the right sort of image there. The thing, that's a sub problem, but what they want to do is underneath that, they want to streamline a sort of process there. They want to streamline something else. That's the top problem that you need to solve for them. And they're talking about all these sort of small fragments of other problems that are related to the top problem. If you truly understand that, then you should figure out and have an answer to the question, what kind of existing alternatives are they using right now, but are not working or can be optimized? Why is that important? That has nothing to do with your competitors. But if we understand how they are trying to solve their issues right now, we also understand what kind of forms or identities these existing alternatives they are using. Because if we understand what they are looking for right now, we also understand how to get into their sort of natural behavior. Because if we understand their natural behavior, we can create a solution that literally slides into what they're used to already. If we want to learn them a completely new behavior, it's going to take too long of a time to make them adjust to that new solution. Then in step 4, we want to understand what do we need to promise the user and the customer to make them, let them make a commitment. And this is all about your proposition. So what is the island that we're going to bring them to? And what is, what kind of problems are solved once you're there? And your promise is going to tell them how you're going to solve their issues, what's it going to look like, and what's it going to cost for them, and what's it going to solve for them. So if we have that and we understand that, we can ask commitments, we can ask for contracts, we can ask for letters of intent, and people are signing that without actually showing or building the product. Because once we have the commitments, it's easier to create a business case, to understand what we actually need to build. And the first thing, like what you're then going to do is build the first version of your product. And that's where you start building. That's where you're going to use MVPs, etc. More on that in a second. Then in step 6, you need to understand if you can deliver on that promise, because your hardware solution or your solution is nothing more than a tool to deliver on that promise. People do not care, most of the people do not care about what the product actually is. They want to solve something. They want to have something that gets them to that new location easier, safer, quicker, cheaper. But that's what we need to understand. And then in step 6, and that's where you're going to build the product, you need to understand if you are able to deliver on that promise, and if you can really help them solve them. That's where you can get into step 7. They're going to refer new people in your niche to you as a company, because then they're so happy that you've solved something for them. It's going to, kickstart your engine of growth. That's what, in our opinion, is what needs to be done before you start scaling anything within innovation.
May I ask a question about
Definitely.
the startup process? Because Lotte was wondering, she says, and I can understand what she says, is that to her it sounds a lot like the step from design thinking, and emphasize, problem solve, problem definition, and so on. So how do you embed the design thinking mindset into lean startup? Is her question.
Yeah, for me, but this is my interpretation. For me, design thinking is applied when you start sketching out your actual solution. And lean startup is also about how are you going to make a business model out of this. And a business model, like if I'm looking at a innovation project, you've got the product part, you've got the sales and marketing part, your operations, and your team. And all four blocks have to grow in like the same speed. Design thinking is there to help you understand what product you need to build, but it's not per se gonna say anything about the business model, about the traction, about the ways you need to create your marketing and sales documents and purposes. But they're all needed to create a commercially successful innovation. So we use design thinking principles, especially when we're in brainstorming. So we've figured out what the actual problems are. We talk to about 40 to 60 people in that stage. When we're in solution discovery, we again talk to about 40 to 60 people before we get into like the design thinking double diamond sort of process to brainstorm what the actual solution should look like. Once we're out of that process, which typically takes a week, then we go back to customers and actually pitch and get the commitments. And after that, we start building our actual first versions of the product. That for me is the biggest difference. And that's why I also say it's our take on lean startup, because lean startup in itself is not, it's not the holy grail. It's a sort of mix of design thinking, customer development, lean startup, all these sort of things. But especially this circle needs to be closed before you can really start scaling up production processes, marketing and sales, etc. Biggest problem that we see again with applying lean startup to hardware solutions is that people have the mindset that you need to build something before you can get a commitment, and that's not really true.
To know from Lotte whether this answers her question or not. Okay, yeah,
Perfect.
Get thumbs up. So I think she's happy so far.
So one of the other key elements of lean startup is using minimum viable products. And a minimum viable product, it's also a sort of term that's being broadly used in all sorts of situations. But it's being used a lot. Sometimes, digital agencies, for example, say can build you an MVP for 100K. Well, for me, that's not an MVP. It has nothing to do with the price tag on, building your MVP. An MVP should learn you more about the customer and your end user with the lowest amount of effort, but the highest return on investment. And return on investment here is learning about your customers and end users. So this graph should tell you a lot in this case. You want to take like the lowest risk possible to make the highest impact on your learnings. So the more you get into this stage, like you need to, for example, invest a lot of money to create a product that can show what it actually does. So first prototype, for example, that's not what the MVP is about. The MVP should first show what kind of value you can deliver towards a customer or towards a client before you start showing that the technique actually works, because that's more into prototyping. prototyping instead of MVPing. The MVP, the only thing that it, in my opinion, should really do is get a customer or a user towards a commitment, towards signing a letter of intent, signing a contract, or signing, something that proves that people want to use this in the future. And that's something different than technically proving that something is working. An example, I've helped a entrepreneur in the beginning, I think it was 6 years ago, and they were building glasses, windows, sorry, with a solar panel in it. And that sounds great, right? But he invested over $1 million of his own money, his own, hard-earned money, to prove that he was able to put a solar panel into a window. The worst thing there was that when he started to show it to potential buyers and users, the first feedback that he got was, it's a great technique, but I can't watch out of the window. It's too blurry. What's the first function of a window? It's transparent, to look outside. And that literally ruined his whole investment. So what he yeah, that was a very, very painful conclusion. The thing here is, he built a prototype, and that's not an MVP. If he could have just created a sort of cut, digitally processed image of what the potential window would look like before he actually started creating the window. If we would have used that in a pitch, he could have gathered this feedback very, very quickly.
And just painted the glass the blurry that he expected it to blurry
Exactly.
to be.
Exactly.
Using like 50 euros.
The point that I want to take across here is that we still see a lot of engineers and a lot of head of products, CTOs, that mention, it's all great, that lean startup, but I'm not able to show people what it will do if I do not have the product. And that's just not true. It's not about what you build. It's about the feedback that you get from users once you show them in very small versions what you are going to deliver. And based on that, you can gather feedback, and that can be done super quickly, but you're going to gather feedback on how it works and what it should potentially look like. And you do not have to spend millions on creating a first version. Or even 100,000 euros is too much for a first version of a first MVP. So
The return on learning,
exactly,
the lowest possible risk. That's the combination you want to make on your MVP, if I get you right.
that's exactly correct. So that the problem that we often see is that teams often brag about the amount of features that they added and what it can do. So they're sort of stacking features, 800 new features. That's great for a product development team, but it doesn't add any value to, one, the business case, because it's going to be more and more expensive to actually build and produce that end product. But it's also not really delivering value to your potential end customer, because most of the times it's 5, maximum of 10 features that they really need in the beginning to solve the problems that they want to solve. The MVP will help you to figure out what these key features are. And thus meaning the MVP can be thrown away after a week. So if you've built an MVP of 1 million, you're emotionally attached to that product and you will never discard it. You will never get rid of it because you've got too much money and thus emotion invested in that product. If it's just a sketch, you will probably just throw it away in a week. And that is what an MVP is about. It's never about technically proving that you can do something. By starting the development of an MVP instead of a prototype of the finished product, it's easier to adjust your product based on the customers and clients' feedback. And it feels like an open door, but try to get back to examples of hardware solutions that are being created in your company, and then really check if they're applying these principles. Because most of the times it's cool to show and build something that you can hold on to. Sometimes an MVP can just be enough by creating a Lego, so from the Lego bricks, just showing what it could potentially look like. And that in itself is an MVP that can show lots of values. And for example, show how big the actual product will be. And just let people show that instead of building the full-fledged product, a 3D print. You're hearing one in the background at this moment, but a 3D print could also help. It shouldn't technically work, but it's going to show how it's going to look like, what size it has, and how it can potentially be used in a process or something else. Any questions right now before I continue? Yeah.
As I also suggested everyone to have questions. And indeed, Lotte has one, and I also see Awais typing a question. Lotte says that it's very recognizable, wanting to build that entire product and introduce features that are not necessarily related to the original problem that we're trying to solve. But how Lotte, how does she convince her stakeholders that we want to present MVPs to their customers to get feedback rather than making the investment of the entire product? So can you give her the most important, can you give her the $1 million argument to convince her colleagues or stakeholders?
Yeah, it's never going to be one answer, but so stakeholders typically want to show something quickly. They want to make a return on investment very quickly, show something in a quarter or half a year. That's not going to work. What you're doing right now feels decelerating instead of accelerating, because you're not building, you're first researching and you're exploring what it's going to do. But by showing them how many, this is, I think, the most critical thing to do. We've learned that if you're actually sharing the amount of people that you've talked to, what kind of conclusions you've drawn out of these 60 conversations, 120 conversations, then showing what people are committing to before you develop anything is going to help them to understand that you're on the right track. Oh, this is why we're in a technical lab, sorry. Sorry for that. By showing the progression on learnings and showing what kind of influence it has on your business case, that's going to help them to understand that you cannot just spend $1 million on building first version of a product. By doing this, you can show them that you will probably save about 90% on just running this process before you start actually building the final version of the product. Because you get commitments on something, they actually know that money is going to come in. You know what kind of budgets your end users or customers have. And based on that, it's easier to build a final product that fits the financial needs, but also the problem and solution needs of your customers. And that's only being done by informing them on the outcomes, not on what what you're intending to do in the future. Just show them, we've talked to 20 people this week. These are the outcomes. We've talked to another 40 people this week, and these are the learnings on our problem and the existing alternatives. And well, typically that's going to learn you so much that about 70% of the assumptions that you made are just not true. So that's already going to save you a lot of time and money.
I hope this helps you a little bit further, Lotte. Of course, if you need a little bit more arguments, then we're happy to maybe help. We also got a question from Alwise. He is wondering how you can make your MVP unique or attractive and keep it low of expensive features while still gathering enough interest from customers.
Yeah.
We see that most Kickstarter projects claim and attract more users just by claiming big.
Yeah, I don't like that, to be quite honest. And why not? I'm going to go back in my presentation. So a Kickstarter will help you to gain some first traction, but then you've got a dip because you're probably not able to deliver on the promise that you made. And if you do not deliver on the promise that you made, you're never able to close this loop. And this loop is more important than the first traction. What makes a product attractive to a specific customer group is not how flashy it looks. It's not what kind of stack of features is in there. You need to solve something, a need or an actual problem that is, sorry, you need to solve a problem or a need in a way that really fits how people live or work. And that's something different than creating something super trendy, super cool, or super flashy, because that's a one-time use. And after that, you're just going to leave it there. And it's not going to create a product that people want to stick to or go back to. So again, and this is almost the same answer as I just gave, but it's really about first, like, understanding to the core, what are you solving? And how many times is that issue popping up? What are they using right now, which they hate about the existing alternative? How should it look like, and how should you create a product that fits their routine? And that's done by just experimenting and not creating more and more flashy stuff. The best value propositions are being explained in 5 seconds. And it has nothing to do with everything that you can do added to that. And the funny part is that will be in the interview in a few minutes.
We will definitely have our own live version and our own live experiments as we have gone through an interesting road together with Sita Robotics, the former project Throwbot of TMC. But of course, Lotte and or Alwise or anyone else, if you want to respond in this webinar, and not by only using text in the chat, but if you want to give a last response or a last follow-up question to the answers Maarten just spoke about, just feel free to to join us in the webinar if you want to interact with us. Of course, so far the chat function works great, but I can imagine that maybe you want to add or elaborate or continue. Feel free to do so.
We're going to invite our guest.
Yeah, I think we do, because we want to go, for the people that know us, we really, of course, we build upon theory, but we really like to be in practice. Both Maarten and I, we really love to work with these processes, work with these people, work with ideas and businesses. And we believe that Danny and his Throwbots project and his soon-to-be Sita Robotics startup is a great example. Before we go to Danny, we have one last question from Kenny. And Kenny is wondering, how strongly held should those commitments be? So could it just be a single paragraph with intended functionality?
The better the commitment, the higher the commitment. The higher the commitment, the better. But we see like about 5 or 6 levels. Highest form of commitment is someone that actually pulls out his or her credit card and says, where can I pay? That's the highest form of commitment. Second one is a prepayment. So 20%, 10% of a prepayment on what you're going to do. Third, and this is the most used, is a letter of intent, which shows this is what I'm going to solve for you. this is the product and the features that are in the first version of the product. This is the amount that you're going to pay to us when we are able to deliver on our promise. And this is the timeline that's in there. And it needs to be signed by the one that has a, well, authority to sign documents. The only reason that you do that is people need to go through the pain of getting a signature, of, you know, getting out their credit cards or filling out a form and saying yes to something, because that means they went through the full authority process to actually make a buy or send, you know, give a signature to something, because that is where you really learn why people want to buy your product or service, or why they want to use your product or service. Does that answer the question for you, Kenny?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Again,
Thank you.
a thumbs up. So
Thanks a lot.
Great.
Let's introduce Danny.
Time to introduce Danny.
And we're going to do a quick swap.
Hello.
So hello, Danny. I do think that maybe, I don't know if everybody can see both of us on the screen.
If you step a little bit there,
Right.
then it's fine.
We need to
Yeah,
like,
it will be very cozy then.
luckily it's allowed right now, right?
right?
So Danny, great to have you here.
Yeah.
Of course, both of us work already for many years at TMC.
Yep.
And actually, I can still remember when you started at TMC more than 4.5 years ago in Eindhoven. Already from that day on, from day one onwards, with the dream to have a technical startup one day. And along the way, within a month, you will be a full owner of your own
Yes,
startup.
indeed.
So we're very interested. How did that go?
Yeah.
And can you maybe introduce yourself?
For sure. Yeah, so my name is Danny. I'm originally a mechatronics engineer, which is actually the combination of mechanical, software, electronics, for those who don't know. Yeah, and indeed, like you say, I worked for almost 6 years now for TMC. And starting in August, I will unfortunately be leaving TMC and continue furthermore on my own startup full time. So yes, as said, as a founder of Sita Robotics. Yeah.
But then, if we both know that the Throwable project already came across very early in your TMC journey, that also means that you are working on this concept about 6 years. Can you, or about 6 years maybe?
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the innovation you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. So indeed, when I started, I had the idea of, why not develop a small robot which you can throw inside a building or inside an object and do some exploration in that. And luckily, TMC had the opportunity to work in the innovation lab on this project.
And why throw?
Yeah, why throw? So I actually got the inspiration from a tender from the Marines. They wanted to look at what's happening on ships, especially for piracy, to see what's if it's clear or if there's something happening on top of the ship, these boats. And I thought, why not take this idea and bring it towards the towards the ground, the urban areas, because there should be a lot of danger and a lot of unsafe spaces in these kind of areas as well, was my assumption.
Yeah, so not only on pirate ships, but also in urban areas. You assumed, to get into the assumption of the lean startup, you assumed that also there you want to get a tool at another place from a safe distance. And for example, by throwing, just like by throwing a ball.
Indeed. So the idea was to acquire information, to look around in the area from a safe distance. So this was actually in the inspiration. And besides, next to that, I think one of the important aspects is, like 6 years ago, drones were already coming up quite a lot.
Yeah.
So you saw people already buying drones. So everybody was able to have one. So why not have? So why is it still that these apparently easy or easy, not easy, but robots that exist for a longer time, why are they not used in such a wide area yet? So yeah, one other assumption was, okay, maybe there's something about the pricing, the accessibility, something that's not really that we couldn't really think what's the reason for that.
So you really want to get a grip on this on these types of robot solutions.
Yeah, indeed. So
compared to the fact that everybody was starting to use drones.
Yeah, indeed.
All of a sudden, drones were the answer.
Yeah, but I think still, even today, drones inside, that's quite a hard topic.
Yeah.
So of course we could have decided to go for indoor drones at that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the easy and accessibility is way easier achieved with something that's driving on the ground.
And everybody got to learn as a kid how to throw a ball, and not everybody is already a drone pilot.
Yeah, and if you
talk about intuitive,
indeed, and if you have ever used a joystick, then you already are quite familiar with the way you could operate such a system. Indeed, yeah.
That already pretty builds a nice bridge to the next question I have for you. And in the meantime, if anyone at home has questions for Danny, maybe now or later, then feel free, of course, to interrupt us or add a question so that Danny and I can discuss it. But how did you then go from that idea, that inspiration from throwing something into an urban area? How did you get to that idea from that idea to your actual minimum viable product? And we just learned from Maarten what is a minimum viable product. Indeed. And I know you actually really worked with that way of working. But how did you do that?
Yeah, no, indeed. Yeah, so of course, let me start off by the MVP wasn't. It wasn't clear at the first moment. So we're thinking, okay, it should be something you can throw. Something, well, the cost price is an essential thing, and intuitivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, indeed.
Really 3 things.
So actually what we did, we just started looking around on the internet, so what's actually already available.
Yeah.
And we actually came up with this toy robot. I don't know if I can show it. So this is actually just a toy robot that we bought 6 years ago. And just as an inspiration, okay, so apparently there's already something that's able to convey information. It's able to drive, but of course this is not something that you can throw.
I can only throw this one.
You can throw it once for sure. Yeah,
probably.
Indeed, and also so if it falls, then it breaks.
Yeah. Not robust enough.
No, indeed. So that was then the focus. So how can we make something that's just a toy towards something that is robust for instance, a military for the Minister of Defense.
Yeah.
So and that's where we came up with our first prototype.
Yeah.
So
this actually indeed reminds me of a ball.
Yeah, indeed. So the first inspiration was let's try to make it as round as possible, that you can. Yeah, I used to play baseball since I was 4 years old, so I know how something that you can throw should look like.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what the first product looked like.
And this is just 3D printed body, 1 camera, and some rubber.
So the idea indeed is to have the toy robot that I just showed you put inside this robot. Don't care about electronics, software, just the mechanical robustness. That's and the throwability. Those are important aspects.
And weren't you ashamed or scared to show this to all those important people at the Minister of Defense with all their I know these guys a little bit because I've worked with you, but Like, here we are.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so we indeed we didn't show this to the administrators in the end. But we used this to actually convince the board of TMC that it's an interesting idea, an interesting product.
Yeah.
And yeah, to have some play money to actually get it started.
And did you do that like full time, full focus, or how did you do that? Also, if you talk about how did you get from ID to MVP, how did you?
Yeah, so indeed, as you can imagine, it's an innovation product that you do not really get money from it, especially not at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this was thought of and built up during evening times.
Mm-hmm.
A bit of a project on the side, so I still had some client projects that were also requires a lot of energy during daytime. So it was an evening project. But what you see now is it started off as an idea, and as soon as it gets a bit more serious, you also want to spend more time on it, and you can innovate even further.
So maybe
so it started on the side.
Okay, so it started indeed as an entrepreneur in evening hours, and further on, but we will get to your road and your journey further on. That grew into something else, with more focus. Yes.
How did you get funding for this? And did you need funding in the beginning for this project up to the point that you're showing right now?
Yeah. So what you see here. So the product I showed you, this just up to this point, we had a funding of 500 euros, which is, well, of course, amazing to have a couple of €100 to start something. But that's just the beginning of to get things rolling. And this convinced the board of TMC to have another, I think, 1,500, 2,000 euros to make the second development and to showcase what you're actually able to. So I think indeed an important aspect is that we have limited budgets. That triggers you to try to be creative and
but you only talk about 1,000 or a few thousands now, and you don't talk about the million example of Max. I hope that answers your question, Gabi, so far. Maybe we already showed one first version, but the question is that the first version? So what did your first versions look like? So this was only the version you did show. It was a Kickstarter to convince that this should officially be a project that they should at least invest a few thousand euros in. And then you continued. So what was the first version you showed to the Minister of Defense?
So of course I brought some more toys with me.
Yeah, I know.
So this is actually the and I can already show the comparison with like the Kickstarter. It's a bit bigger. It's a bit heavier as well. So, but this is actually the first version of a driving robot that we wanted to showcase to our actual clients.
Yeah. So this was done on a few thousand euros.
Yeah, indeed. Okay. Yeah, it's mainly 3D plastics, some rubber. We how do you call it? Well, we made ourselves, let's say, and the electronics inside is just Arduinos, just off-the-shelf products.
Off-the-shelf, yeah.
Integrating it together and trying to make it drive, trying to make it work.
Yeah.
And we, of course, were super proud when it actually moved and actually could drive around in the lab. So with our proudness, we went towards the Ministry of Defense to show them, look at our final product. Well, they looked at it and say, yeah, it looks nice, guys, but it's way too heavy. It's 3 kilos, and it's way too much to actually take with your belt and bring along all day. So of course,
by showing this, you learned that there's only a very specific and limited amount of kilos that people in the world of defense are allowed to work with, as they have to walk or travel with that all day long.
Yeah.
And before you didn't know, so that's why, of course, you didn't assume that size and weight.
We actually thought that this was already small. If you compare it
of course.
to the large robots we see now, bringing drinks somewhere in the restaurants. But, we thought this is actually already quite a small robot that you can easily bring along.
But okay, I can even, so that was the proudness dropped a little bit there.
Yeah.
But I can also remember that was also a very great moment where you started to discuss together with the Minister of Defense, because they wanted all of it. They had so many priorities. Like, okay, what is then our top 5 or top 10?
Yep. So indeed,
how did you do that?
So looking back, this was actually the starting point of a collaboration with the Minister of Defense, because it made them think, okay, so what is important to us, and also for us, what is important to them to develop on. So they came with a list of items that they think or that they thought were important. I think it was a list of 30 items or something.
Yeah, I can indeed remember 20 plus.
Yeah,
that's like still a lot. Yeah.
So we were like, okay, so if we want to do this, oh, and by the way, it should also cost no more than a couple of €100
per piece.
Per piece.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a challenge, especially since you're still in a development phase. So we actually went through the whole list and came to like a short list of 5 items maybe, among which size and weight and the accessibility were important aspects. And things like there was also something like 4K. It should have a 4K camera on it, and it should be able to drive underwater, things like that.
Yeah.
Which of course might be important aspects, but not the key aspects for an MVP to prove what they are, where they would use it for.
And that's very interesting, because how did you then manage and make sure that the end users' needs and wishes, that list of 30 items actually still fitted your end user, because you brought it back to like top 5.
Yep.
How did you get to that joint consent also?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question.
Sorry, I didn't.
I think what's important there is the fact that we were sitting around it. Yeah. We're in conversation with each other. Collaboration, indeed.
Yeah.
So at first, so until the point that we actually had this driving, we didn't really have a formal contact with our potential clients yet. So we were more of just hobbying or staying inside our own lab.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important aspect. So weighing, okay, so if 4K camera is important, how much can it weigh? So what's the volume that we can increase? Because we cannot do everything within the Of course we can, but then the price rate would go up. So there's always trade-off.
You started to negotiate also like 4K, and also does have a lot of impact on price. How important is price related to the image quality and so on and so on. And also what's interesting is that, of course, you were super proud on this version, and of course they had their comments immediately. At the same time, without this version, there maybe
wouldn't be interesting for them.
Maybe there would have not been such a close collaboration and partnership with the Minister of Defense. So in the end, this thing has done a lot.
Yeah, for sure. So we keep it in our museum at the moment.
Sure. Yeah. Still, if you have questions at home, then let us know. And of course, we are you are now preparing your official spin-off. But in those almost 6 years, what are your biggest learnings?
So biggest learnings, I think we already briefly mentioned it. Getting out of the building.
Getting out
yeah,
of the
so
building.
and
Yeah.
every time I hear
Why
people
is it
saying this,
so important?
and every time people hearing this, I feel, oh, that's such a cliche. I'm just more comfortable
There
in
we
my
go
life.
again.
Yeah, there we go again, indeed.
Yeah.
But it's really yeah, it's actually true. So if you don't and you keep on developing further on your product, yeah, then you will get a better horse. You won't get a car. That's
Yeah. To get to Mr.
Yep,
Henry Ford
indeed.
again. And how important is getting out of the building, especially for hardware solutions? Because I can imagine that you only want to go to a customer when you're proud of something. So you do want to engineer to a certain level.
Yeah.
So as a hardware engineer, because I know you're a hardware engineer yourself, what's
Yep. Yeah. So the next to briefly grab upon the final version that we are now.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So this is the version that's currently or has been tested
Let's
by.
make a quick comparison, right?
Yeah, indeed. So
like half.
Indeed. So that the version that's currently and has been tested by the Ministry of Defense.
Yeah.
Before it was in actual final version, it was just shelves again. So we printed some shelves. We went to them and said, okay, so how does this feel? Can you actually throw it? We made them throw some of those things. Everything broke down, but well, we learned so that there's actually some potential in that. So yes, for sure, especially with hardware, yeah, you have to feel it, you have to touch it, to maybe even smell it in order to get a real feeling of how it
break something. Maybe
for sure. Yeah.
Let them use it because probably nothing ever broke in the entry lab. But the first time the customer uses it, something breaks.
Yeah, I do remember that one of those guys grabbed it and he asked me, "Can I throw it?" And I said yes, and I expected that he would do something like this, but he just threw it.
He did a real throw.
Yeah, towards the wall. So that was, yeah, of course it was broken, but we learned that if you say you can throw it, then they will throw it against the wall, not just.
So like, if you look at the graph of the graph that Maarten showed, like the impact on learning was, the return on learning was quite high.
Indeed.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good to know. And also, like looking back and looking forward, if you could change or adjust anything, knowing what you know today, what would you have done differently together with your team in the road that you have been on?
Yeah, so I think still next to the fact that you would go out earlier, also defining your MVP and the things that are important. Yeah, we could have done earlier.
That the top priority.
Yeah,
is,
indeed.
Jimmy.
So what is important to them? What is the actual MVP that you are?
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing, because especially as a technical guy, everything is possible. You want to make it perfect. You want to make it yeah. You want to show that what you can all do.
Yeah.
But I think that's making these boundaries and sticking to them. That's, yeah, I would say one thing that we could have and are currently doing differently than the previous.
So that's project. Very interesting, because then you also mean probably that this robot initially had way more features than it has today. But tomorrow you would even be more critical on the level of items or elements or features your next product would have.
For sure. Yep, indeed. That's
because currently this focuses on, if you would like just sum it up.
Yep. So I think the wait, you mean summing up
your current solution focuses on, I know it's
acquiring information, safe distance. So like the distance is an important aspect. Robustness for falling, and the communication itself, that's an important aspect.
Yeah. And so the acquiring information from a safe distance with a robust product that works intuitive and is affordable. 5 things.
Yeah, indeed.
That's it.
Yep.
And we started with 30.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
There's one question.
Yeah, because this was actually my last question to
Yep.
you, Danny. But of course, I'm very curious. What are your questions at home or at the office?
So there's a question. Have you evaluated or got feedback for this product from other industries? Intention of this question is to know about how to practically listen to users' feedback.
To users' feedback, yeah, right. So indeed, we also actually use this. So maybe that's a good addition to the project that we have been done with the Ministry of Defense. At one point, we by accident came into contact with a police officer who was on the premises of the ministry, and we were just talking here, and he was interested in the things that we were doing, and due to these first conversations, we now have a project together with the police where they are using these systems to do some inspection of the area underneath the houses, which are of course quite sandy and hard to shelters indeed.
Yeah, or those
especially
little
those small
spaces,
those little spaces. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And next to that, also for cars, for instance. So because we had something to show at one customer, we were able to get a second customer to start prototyping and developing on. And actually, we are now making a new device that fits their needs, and hopefully we can use this device again for another customer or maybe the first customer. So yeah, that's indeed.
So you will use your main body and all the main learnings from the all the collaborations and the work that you have done together with the Ministry of Defense to only adjust a few elements to the industry of the police and the type of work that they want to use it for.
Yep.
And I also remember that you work on a project in which you can use it in the security industry.
Yep.
Again, a very different industry because security is also acquiring information from a safe distance, but maybe from a preventive
point of view.
Yep. Other than there's like already a dangerous situation. So you do try to work with different industries.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we do try to keep looking at new opportunities, and we think that the only way we can actually show or actually convince a partner by actually showing something. It doesn't have to be the final product. So I fully agree with the cycle itself. It's not building a final product, but building a prototype, or building or just 3D printing some. Actually, the frame is that's being printed is ours, to show the next generation of systems.
What would be, and maybe we have a few questions at home, but what to the audience that we have with us today, to the guests that we have with us today, what would your advice to them to start doing tomorrow?
Yep. So what helped us a lot is not hesitating if we should buy this camera or that camera, or which of these 3 antennas should we use. We bought all 3, we tried them, we tested them, and well, we figured that which one is best for our case. So don't hesitate to buy the component or product that you think might be interested, because the hesitation itself has already cost you more than actually just buying the component.
It's like not quick and dirty, but quick and
feel fast.
Feel fast. Also experimenting there. Just buy the 3 antennas, and then you will know what's the best antenna.
Indeed.
And don't make a study out of antennas before buying an antenna. Cool.
Let's do a last round.
Yeah, last round.
If people still have any questions for Danny, for Lotte, or for me, feel free to share your last question right now, and otherwise we're gonna wrap up the webinar.
Yeah.
Invite you for the next one. The last chance to ask your question to either Danny, Lotte, or me.
Yes, I would like to ask. Are you able to listen to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my question is for Martin. So it seems like for hardware projects, it's a bit of lag or pull down for them that they cannot directly interact with the user or end users compared to the software. Yeah, and they can always email and stuff like that. So, but there must be some tools or some platforms where we can do that with a lesser amount of users. And
Don't think
have
you're
you
gonna
enough?
like this answer immediately,
Uh-oh.
but there's one tool that's
Okay.
the most important tool that everyone has. It's this, and your ears. Just have
Okay.
a chat.
Okay.
Literally have a chat. It's the most important thing. Don't use platforms, don't use survey tools, don't use emails. Pick up the phone, ask for a meeting, and start asking questions. Use email to get an introduction and ask whatever you want to ask. And then use the principles that we showed, like 3D printing or just buying a little toy. Show what the idea behind it is. That's crucial. And that doesn't matter if you're building a digital product or a hardware product.
So use email only to get the meeting, and then, as Danny said, get out of the building and get to the meeting with your toy or with your 3D printed
The
prototype.
most valuable and highest return on investment MVP you can use, just talking to someone.
And what if, so maybe you can recall, because Danny, it can also be pretty scary to get out
Yep.
of the building.
So, and
how did you grow into
Indeed,
that one?
and I can really relate to your question because for me it really helps to have something physical with me, because even when there's no connection, you can always talk about the thing that you brought with you. But yeah, of course, it helps to get things started. Yeah.
And how did you grow into that? Because making your first meeting was probably way more exciting, and also maybe
yeah. Well, I think what's in
scary than the 100th time.
Yeah, so I think actually doing what you do to me now is just asking the questions, and because as long as you keep on asking questions, they of course want to tell about all their problems and all the difficulties they have, and especially if you bring something with you, they say, yeah, maybe it should have a rectangular shape, or maybe it should have a it should be black, of course, because otherwise people would see it.
But they will always tell you valuable.
And you ask why should it be rectangular, or why is it important that people don't see it? So you keep on.
So if they tell
asking.
you it needs to be black, then you already have an interesting starting point. Okay, why black?
Yeah.
Why dark?
Yeah.
Why? Okay, cool. Great
So
addition.
just to append my question. So but we are our intention is to have a lean startup, right? And if it's quite scary sometimes that you are not getting that feedback or even any return from your investment. So how to cater that as well?
The feedback on your product, you mean?
Yes. When we are pitching our product to the customers, and it is a prototype product, or we are launching an MVP, and we are not getting enough returns or feedback, and still we are waiting. So it's a scary thing for any entrepreneur.
Yeah, but believe me, in this case, if you ask someone to give feedback on a product or on a version of a product, they will give it to you. Do not be scared about any, they're going to give feedback no matter what. Your job, however, is, sorry, excuse me, is your job to filter out what you need to hear to validate or invalidate your assumptions. And you can direct the questions there. But that's harder than just having people give you feedback, because they will. They will definitely will do that. It's how you direct it and what kind of learnings you want to get out of that. And just showing a not working product, just the outlays of it, it's most of the times it's enough already. That's lean. I mean,
Hope that helps, Awais.
Yes, yes, indeed.
it's 5:30.
And we have one last.
Yeah,
Thing from
that's
food.
yeah. It seems you just wants to share.
Hi, I just
Share
messaged.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Again, I want to call you people working in TMC are lucky because actually I got some offer from TMC. I might be your potential colleague. But from Italy. So and I know your company structure very well than anyone I can say. And you people are lucky for into TMC. So it is supporting companies, supporting, and especially through a bot. I have seen it a month back, and then I registered your Lotte the webinar and all. But yeah, having a company like this in nowadays, it's actually it's surprising for me when I have seen your company. So that's why I call you lucky. You're yes,
Thank you
I might be
for the
potential
compliment.
colleague. We'll see you soon, and that's a great thing actually. Throwbot, I appreciate for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and hope
That's
to
all.
see
Have
you
a nice
soon.
day. Surely. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Let's wrap up.
Yeah.
Webinar.
And one last thing that we want to share with you is that we will keep on organizing webinars together with you. Actually, next webinar, which we will organize after summer. So we expect to have a new date for you like early September onwards. We will also talk about how important it is to protect or not to protect your ID or MVP or innovation together with another guest. The next guest would be Adonis. Of course, you're very much welcome and invited to join us next time. And we will try to schedule a suitable date and time for everyone, knowing all the holiday schedules that probably will start soon for many of you. So for now, thank you. Also, on behalf of Maarten, Danny, thank you for being our guest.
Yes,
It was super cool
no
to
problem.
have you on the show.
Very nice to be here.
And hope to see you next time. Enjoy your evening.
Bye
Right.
bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Je moet nog wel, wacht even, je moet nog wel even de recording...
Jij moet de recording stoppen.
Hij is er al uit.
Mike staat nog aan.